In the early years of our creative careers, we often find ourselves with a ton of completed projects that remain hidden on hard drives, untouched, and often underappreciated. As we strive to craft a strong portfolio, it's easy to become discouraged thinking that we have to wait for that next big project to breathe some new life into it. What if I told you that those old, untouched projects may hold some untapped potential when you look at them with a different goal in mind? One powerful tool that we have as filmmakers are director's cuts. So here's what we're working with. About a year ago, I was hired through a creative agency to work with a brand called Omorpho. This is a high-end athletic weighted training apparel brand. They wanted to create a unique piece surrounding two talented NFL athletes, Alexander Madison and Britton Covey, and how they train with Omorpho to level up their game. I worked closely with the producer and the creative director to figure out what was realistic to create with the given shooting schedules and resources that we had within our budget. This was one of those projects that I was initially approached as filling the role for director of photography, but after some conversation and back and forth, we ended up taking on the entire thing, including post-production. What's always exciting about projects like this is I'm able to bring in some of my own crew, and so my wife, Kylie, I've been training her for a while now to operate sound, and so I was able to get some extra budget and have her join me on the project as the sound mixer. Our production schedule didn't allow for any time to set lighting. We had very limited time with these athletes. And so this entire project was heavily reliant on a run and gun mentality in order to get the best result for this production. The end goal and deliverables ended up being a bit tricky to balance. Clients want stuff that can live on web, but also in social outlets. So we're struggling to try and find the balance of shooting for horizontal and vertical content. But at the end of all of it, we were able to deliver on what the client needed. I still had those lingering feelings of feeling kind of like I under-delivered on my original expectations for the bar of quality. These kind of small tweaks that certainly are what the client perceives as being the best use of all of the content, but as the filmmaker, as the storyteller, I don't know, kind of left me feeling a little bit undersatisfied. There's no reason that all of that footage should be laid to rest on hard drives, never to be seen again. With a fresh set of eyes or a refined storytelling ability, or even collaborating with other creatives in the process, you have an opportunity to bring old footage back to life. This is the power of director's cuts. Like a year and a half ago, when I was approached with this project and ended up taking on all of the post-production, I knew that the timeline was gonna be incredibly tight. So I ended up reaching out to Jack to help me with this, to help kind of handle some components to the edits.
I'm not good at this side of the camera.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is my good friend, Jack Bodie.
I'm a freelance editor. I'm from Bend, Oregon. I grew up in Portland area and then went to school out here in Bend, and like during college started making videos with my friends. So that's how I kind of got into everything.
Yeah.
The last like couple years started to hone in more on post-production and just editing side of things. That's where like my specialty is more so like the live time cutting and like how quickly you can turn something around.
Right.
It's really hard to do for a long period of time.
You gotta go in waves. I mean, you're frequently flying out for like multi-day festival shoots where you have like 5 different shooters dumping footage to you on an hourly basis, and you're having to crank out like same day cuts that are going live on the, the festival social page.
Really what it comes down to is people hire me as like a live editor.
Working in an environment where essentially you are on the clock, like literally physically in an editing room where you have clients and shooters breathing over your shoulder. Props, mad respect, not easy. I think at the end of the day, everything that we created was like solid, you know what I mean? Like it had everything that the client needed. I think, we felt pretty happy at the time, and also it was quite a while ago. And so I think, for that given time period, we were feeling pretty good about it. You start continuing to work on new projects, you want to keep building that portfolio, and maybe you think back to a shot that was like in one of those videos, or maybe got cut out of one of those videos. And you're like, damn.
You go through this whole process process of trying to work through a piece or a cut or sizzle with a client, I always say like kill your darlings is such a huge part of my job, because you're basically having to pull so many good clips and good shots out of the cut that you like intentionally want it to look like. Yeah, like going back to the footage that's just sitting on my hard drive, like I think that's kind of a fun thing and a fun new way to look at that footage.
Yeah.
When you don't have those like client restrictions, when you have that like refreshing perspective and point of view, be like, hey, what looks good for like my sake? What looks good to like be a final export?
I'm a nice dude. Cities, ice creams, $1 bill. That whited what's
One more for away, baby.
it's for your best, they ain't gon' pass some shit. A second. See, I'm home and I'm pouring Don and I'm over best weed, 'cause I got it going on.
I sent you over a pretty solid layout of kind of a framework that I had in mind. We had a good song to work with, a few different references for visuals in terms of some sequences, some different type of effects that we wanted to go for.
Since it was kind of a messy project and it's from an existing project that's been released, I kind of had to do it in an unorthodox way. I started with the track that you sent over. Again, like I was just pulling pieces from what I've done in the past, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't. Like I said, that word refreshing, I think that's just like a good word to like really keep in mind when you're cutting. I added a ton of elements that weren't approved by the client in the original piece to this one, including like the football footage, the commentary highlights.
Throughout the timeline, I mean, you've definitely got like a lot of effects going. I know that some of that's probably your own little custom sauce. Do you use like overlays or like graphic assets?
We've been going back and forth on this edit, but like it needs fill and it needs that like pop.
When you think of like how to spice up an edit, of course, like having the best footage to begin with is always amazing, having a really good song, but there's always so many small sort of filler shots and filler assets that you can utilize.
A lot of it is kind of custom and I'm just keyframing in and out and cropping. But then for the flares and overlays, I resort to Storyblocks for a lot of my overlays. Dude, I don't think I've ever done like an ad read.
This video is sponsored by Storyblocks. Using graphic assets, using overlays, different blending modes can really take your edit to the next level. Maybe we're on a tight timeline with regards to shooting a project. A client wanted a drone shot, but they weren't able to get somebody to do it. Storyblocks has an incredible amount of assets, drone shots, any type of footage, which I think everybody knows them for, but they also have royalty-free music. They also have sound effects, graphic assets, overlays, templates. It's 100% royalty-free. Once you have a Storyblocks subscription, you have full access and rights usage to that content. Doesn't matter if it's going on your social media page, doesn't matter if it's global commercial campaign. One thing that Jack and myself use from Storyblocks all the time in our edits, and he used in this edit,
Rain or even just a light like film flash.
Yep. So to get started with unlimited stock media downloads at one fixed price, head over to storyblocks.com/Ryan Cow or click the link down in the description. Jack, what do you got to say to Storyblocks?
Thank you so much for sponsoring this video and making my life easier as an editor. Thank you. The end of it is something that I've done for another video, and I thought it was cool to add a little football finger when he's also pointing up during his training.
Yep.
End it with a clean amorpho font.
What's your approach for sound design? Like, what are some of like your principles with how much to do, or how to motivate sound in an edit?
Like I said, that's where I started. So I'm kind of just going off how the track sounds. First, like manipulate the track itself with either doing lower high passes, reverbs, make it sound cooler than it is. It's a sick track, but just mess it up with sound design and see what adds well. I mean, like you'd think I'd have it down to like a process, but it's still really trial and error.
Yeah.
And then all the hits, the whooshes, the heavy hitting sounds just comes from everywhere.
Man, I was gonna say there might be a really good source for you if you're looking for some more sound effects in the future.
Editing makes the project, and that's your final piece or your final hand to the outcome of a project. So I like the control over it. I like that aspect of like I have the final say. I can do whatever I want until the client tells me not to.
Totally. It's really unique the way that editing works. It's like if you have a good enough editor, you can make the worst footage in the world like still tell a story, right? But if you have like the most beautiful footage in the world, but you have an editor that has zero experience, like
Exactly.
it can be a lot of really cool kind of opportunity to like reflect and grow as
Yeah.
like a creative and as an artist, to be able to like retouch it again and like create something that you're hyped about again and reflect on and like sort of measure yourself from like where you started and like where you can arrive to now.
I mean, that's where we all started, was just making stuff for fun. That should never go away. If I lose that, then I'm out of a job and I don't like it anymore.
It's like if you can't maintain that sort of same mindset, you know, as you begin to make this all a career, doing it paid and doing it on other people's time, you will really quickly find that it will drain more out of you than it'll give to you.
I think it's really important to capitalize on your ideas when you have them. If you don't, then they will, like you said, will be sitting on the back burner forever, or you'll forget about them. Like if I find a good track, I'll try and implement that in my job in one way or another. Usually they're not approved by a client, so I'll just use it for fun and keep the creative juices flowing.
Okay, so hopefully what I've shown you guys is the importance of not underestimating some of those older projects, some of that footage that's been sitting on hard drives for maybe multiple years at this point. Director's cuts are the keys to reimagining and unveiling some of those shots that may have been way more impressive than you thought, and can add something to your portfolio or to your body of work that might help you land that next client that you've been chasing.